How I feel? Relax. What I want?
I love the way she rock it. I love the way she move it, shake it on me. When she clap for him, the shawty is the winner. You can tell that shawty's no beginner. She's confident. I love the way she move it.
YouTube, what's going on? It's Juan Gotti here. We another Washington Commanders video, and in today's video, I'm coming on here with the video where we're going to be talking about if the next Washington Commanders head coach is offensive minded, should they keep Bienemy on the staff as the offensive coordinator? And then we're going to also talk about should the Washington Commanders, if they go defensive minded head coach, should they hire Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn? Let's talk about it, but before we do, make sure you guys go down below, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're on the road to 7,000 subscribers, so please help me get there as soon as possible. We greatly appreciate it. Memberships are now available, so if you would like to become a member, you can do that too and join the Gotti Gang. Now that out the way, let's go ahead and get straight to it. So yesterday's video, it was a question left on the video in the comment section. Shout out to Roberto Figueroa 465. He says, just a question. If we bring in an offensive-minded head coach, do we keep EB to help develop him? And I'm assuming he's talking about Sam Howell. And then he says, if we go defensive-minded head coach, what do you think about Dallas's defensive coordinator? So shout out to Roberto again. And sometimes I'll make you guys' questions into a video like this one if it's a really good question that I can go into detail about. First things first, if we hire an offensive minded head coach, should we keep Bienemy here to develop Sam Howell? Honestly, I don't think so, only because the next offensive minded head coach, if he is in fact going to be here in Washington, it's probably going to be no use for Bienemy to be here, because the offensive-minded head coach is going to want to install his own scheme, and more likely than not, he's going to be the one that called the plays. So he's going to strip down everything that Bienemy has installed here and install his own thing. So in my opinion, it really wouldn't mean nothing for him to be here. He would just have the title of offensive coordinator. And then to think that everything that's been going on and put out about him, saying he's not a a lot of guys don't get along with them, or they would prefer him not to be the next head coach. And even dating back to the summertime, where people were saying that his practices was too hard and stuff like that. So it probably wouldn't even be a good mix anyway, because a lot of the players don't want him here. Now, again, I know some of y'all like, Juan, these players haven't won nothing. They have no right to complain. But what I was saying in my last video when we talked about Bienemy was like, you're right, they haven't won anything. But when you're trying to coach as hard as Bienemy is trying to coach and you're not winning, it's going to fall on deaf ears, and they're going to start to tune you out, because it's like we're beating ourselves up all week long just to go out and lose. Man, I'm tired of this. I want to try something new. And again, like I said in my last video about this, I've never seen Terry McLaurin look so defeated. Like, he looks so deflated. That's one of our star players, arguably our best player on the team, and he's always a guy we can count on. And he never shows emotion, whether he's up or sad, or rarely does. He shows a little bit of emotion, but like, it's always either a really hyped Terry or really composed Terry. But you can just tell he's off, and it's bothering him. So to make a long story short, I personally would not bring Bienemy back, because again, it wouldn't be no purpose, because unless the next offensive minded head coach comes in and be like, hey, look, EB, I like what you was doing, I'm gonna keep you around, and we're gonna run your scheme, and it's like, if that's the case, then what's the point of you being a quote-unquote offensive-minded head coach? Now, again, I think Nick Sirianni is an offensive-minded head coach, and Brian Johnson calls the plays. So, I mean, it could be something like that, but I don't really necessarily believe that is to be the case, because it's deeper than just the play call. And again, you got to get along with your coach, and some of these players don't, and you want to create a culture where people get along with each other, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. Now, I don't really have a problem with Dan Quinn. The thing is with Dan Quinn is we don't have the talent that Dallas has. So if we still had a Chase Young and a Montez Sweat, it would make it more appealing for him to want to come here. But now, if he comes here as the head coach, it's like you ain't really got nothing to work with. So I really don't expect you to make my defense Dallas's defense, because they have really good defensive pieces. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, Dan Quinn is a guy that took the Atlanta Falcons to the Super Bowl, so he has some credibility. But also, if he's the defensive-minded head coach, we're going to have to go look for an offensive coordinator. Could Eric Bienemy stay? Probably, but again, that is probably not going to resonate with a lot of the players. But again, the players ain't really win nothing, so a lot of y'all are like, who cares what the players think? I think the players should care what the players think, because they're the one that's doing the work, really. So Dan Quinn would be interesting, but who's to say Dan Quinn even wants to leave? Like, every year we talk about Dan Quinn as the next hottest head coaching candidate coming out, but what if he just doesn't want to leave? What if he just doesn't want to become a head coach? I swear for the last like 2 to 3 years, he's supposed to have been coming out as the next head coach, the next batches of head coaches the following year, and he never does. So all of a sudden this year's supposed to finally be the year when this, in my opinion, Dallas is playing their best ball that they've been playing in a long time. So I don't know if Dan Quinn even wants to become a head coach. I feel like he probably is just cool with being a defensive coordinator, because all he has to worry about is the defense, right? And it's like his group is playing good. Like, in my opinion, if I'm Dan Quinn, I would just be wanting to be the highest paid defensive coordinator. I wouldn't care about being a head coach, because there's so much other stress you got to worry about with becoming the head coach. Unless Dan Quinn wants that challenge again, I would be perfectly fine in my position. Now, I think that's where he's at. I personally feel like he just doesn't want to become a head coach anymore, and that's totally fine. Like, he already had his shot at it. He already went to a Super Bowl. He had some success, but now he's just kicking tail being a defensive coordinator. And sometimes that's all guys want to do, right? That's all guys want to do, especially after they already got their opportunity. So we always think Dan Quinn is going to be moved or want to leave Dallas. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he likes what he has in Dallas, and he just wants to build with that group for the rest of, his coaching tenure. Now, again, if he was to come out, I would be interested. But to be honest with you guys, I personally would want a offensive-minded head coach to pair with my young quarterback and Sam Howell. So that's why you always hear Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick. I even heard Press Taylor, the Jaguars offensive coordinator. I heard his name a few times too. I don't know if you guys would be wanting Press Taylor, but there's some guys out there that I would prefer over Dan Quinn. And as far as the offensive-minded head coach, again, Eric Bienemy being here with them, it would really serve no purpose, because he would just be, again, essentially back in Kansas City where he's just holding the clipboard. Because, again, I think most offensive-minded head coaches are the ones calling the plays. And even if he's not calling the plays, the next offensive-minded head coach, he's probably going to want to bring in somebody from his old staff. So, for an example, if we was to bring in the Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick as head coach, he's probably going to want to bring in the quarterback's coach from Houston. He's probably going to want to bring in the passing game coordinator from Houston to then become the offensive coordinator, so they're already on the same page. They already know the scheme, right? So it's not like, oh, I have to get familiar with you because I don't know you like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? So to me, it makes more sense to go with the offensive-minded head coach that calls the plays. Even if he doesn't call the plays, bring in his own guy, because Eric Bienemy is just standing here, and it's like, okay, EB, I mean, you cool, but you ain't all that, right? Because let's be real, Eric Bienemy hasn't been that impressive. If that was the case, he probably would have been in a position to get a head coaching job here, but clearly he hasn't been, and a lot of us don't even want him back as the offensive coordinator next year. So to me, it personally, offensive minded, again, I would prefer it to be somebody totally different, and they either call the plays or bring in their own guys. And defensive minded, Dan Quinn piques my interest, but again, we don't have enough for him to be interested in, guys. I mean, he could come in here and change the defense around to a certain extent. Maybe he comes in and we draft a ton of defensive guys and he builds them up to just be this juggernaut. But then you would have to go out and get a really good offensive coordinator. And then the thing you have to worry about after that, if he in fact is a good offensive coordinator in 2 to 3 years, he's probably going to be, you know, up to charge for a potential head coaching gig. That's another thing you have to keep in mind when you're talking about defensive-minded head coaches, is that their offensive coordinator could get poached at some point, and you really don't want to mess that up. Dan Quinn's already been through that, right? Kyle Shanahan was his offensive coordinator in Atlanta, and then he went to San Francisco, you know, so. And I don't even know if their offense was ever the same again after that, really. So you got to keep that in mind too. If you're on the side of, hey, give me a defensive-minded head coach, we're gonna have to find our own offensive coordinator, and he could potentially be gone in 2 years if him and Sam Howell is making noise. You can say, oh, bring in Dan Quinn, let Eric Bienemy run the show on offense. Again, that sounds good to some of you, but you got to realize these players are starting to speak out about EB and not really liking EB. His style doesn't fit in today's NFL. And again, I'm not saying Eric Bienemy is wrong for coaching hard. That's cool. If you're going to coach hard, though, you got to make sure you're winning. You got to make sure you're having success. Nobody's going to want to go through this rigorous training if it's no outcome. We're 4-8. If we were 8-4, 7-3 or whatever, whatever the case may be, we would be not complaining about Eric Bienemy's practices and how he is, and he talks crazy to these players. Like, again, we got to realize, and I know I'm kind of ranting, but these players are grown men, right? Some of these players are, and we have very few of them, but some of these players are 30 plus. Yeah, Eric Bienemy is like 50, so he's much older than these guys, but these are grown men. So if you talking slick to a grown man or talking crazy, they gonna be like, what? Like, what? Like, I understand you coach, but at the end of the day, it's two grown men talking, or, you know, that you in a building with, right? It ain't college. If this was college, a 18-year-old, 19-year-old guy, 20, whatever, you can talk to them like that, because again, they really don't have nothing, and you can mold them into something. But a grown man that is already established in the NFL, they probably not gonna rock with that. So again, I just don't think his style fits here in Washington, and I think it's just best that we move on from him in total. So to answer your question, I know it was a pretty much 12-minute video, but I wanted to go deep into it. Great question. But to answer your question again, no, I wouldn't want Eric Bienemy back, because the offensive-minded head coach, I want him calling the plays, and I want him to be with Sam Howell, you know, kind of neck and neck, always with each other. But if the next offensive-minded head coach decides to bring in an offensive coordinator to call the plays, I would prefer to be his own guy. Passing game coordinator, quarterbacks coach, somebody that he's familiar with from his last stop, because they can still have that camaraderie, and you don't have to worry about going somewhere else and you don't know anybody, and then you would have to hire an offensive coordinator to learn your whole scheme, and it just wouldn't make sense in my opinion. Defensive minded, Dan Quinn, he's cool, he piques my interest, but it's really nothing here for him to coach. Right, so it really would defeat the purpose of going to get a defensive-minded head coach, because we don't have nothing really on the defense anymore that is worth coming over here to coach, to leave Dallas for. And then two, we got to realize maybe Dan Quinn does not want to leave Dallas. He's in a really, really good spot, and he's pretty sure he's making really good money. So he probably doesn't even want to become a head coach anymore. But with that being said, I appreciate the question once again. Love each and every one of y'all. Y'all, please leave y'all opinions down below in the comment section about today's video. How would you feel about if we hired the next offensive-minded head coach? Would you want Eric Bienemy back as OC? And also, defensive-minded, would you want Dan Quinn as the Washington Commanders' next head coach? Leave that all down below in the comment section. Y'all have a blessed one. It's me, your boy Juan Gotti. Like, comment, subscribe. Hail to the Washington Commanders. We're on the road to 7,000 subscribers, so please hit that subscribe button on your way out and like this video and share it out. Y'all have a blessed one. Peace safe. Peace.